Hey, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to go over books that we want to read in 2020 that are not genres that we typically read. So, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I picked some science fiction books because I don't really read a whole lot of science fiction. It's always kind of scared me.
Yeah.
I think because I associate science fiction with endings that aren't really satisfying.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's kind of like, but it's like first contact with aliens, for example, but then it ends with like, you still don't really know where the aliens came from or what they wanted. They just
That's
kind
true.
of, it just, I don't know. But I'm gonna give it a try.
That seems up your alley though. You like loose endings.
Not where like, I need to know, I don't know.
Very specific about your loose endings.
I guess so. If it has to do with humans, then like, it's fine because we're messy, but like with aliens, I need to know. Where did they come from? Where did they go?
Where did they come from? Cotton Eye Joe.
So the first book I have on my list is Revelation Space by Alistair Reynolds. So this one is about I think it's a society or something that was like just wiped out and nobody really knows where they went or what happened. And so the scientist decides to try to find out what happened. Which, again, makes me a little nervous because that sounds like the perfect setup for some sort of loose end that I don't like.
They don't know where they came from.
Yeah. So he, like, teams up with, like, a cyborg crew on a spaceship.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then there's, like, a killer on the loose trying to kill him or something because there's somebody who doesn't want the secret known.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's a series. I don't know how many there are, but that's the first one, so... We'll see. Hopefully it's good.
That's a big investment.
I know. Well, and when I was picking these, I was like, these probably aren't like the best beginner sci-fi, but I just like to jump right in.
So the first book on my list that I want to read is also a science fiction. It's The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. And this one, I don't know a ton about it, and it's not a very long book, so there's probably not a whole lot to say about it.
Is it technically a short story?
You know what? I don't know. So there's a man... and he becomes invisible.
Yay!
Who would have thought? But while he's invisible, he goes around and he like goes on this killing spree.
Oh.
So it's science fiction, and then I think it also dabbles in horror a little bit. So I'm kind of excited to see what it's about. It has a surprisingly low rating for it being H.G. Wells. I kind of thought it'd be rated higher, but
Yeah, me too.
I'm still gonna give it a shot. I mean, it's only like 100 pages. I don't have much to lose.
No, that's true. The next book on my list is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this book is about humanity as they leave. I think it's the Earth because the Earth is dead and so they're trying to inhabit a new planet. And they're following the steps of like their ancestors who obviously have like sent other spaceships there. But they like filled one spaceship with spiders or something and sent like these spiders to this planet. But the spiders have evolved and they're intelligent now and they're big. And so it just kind of follows like what happens when they get there, I guess.
It's like a less cute version of WALL-E.
Yeah, it really is. So I'm excited about that one.
That one sounds terrifying. Okay. So the next book that I want to read in 2020 is Wild Swans by Yung Chang. This is a biography. And so Yung Chang, the author, she's writing about her grandmother and her mother. And her grandmother was a concubine of a warlord. And so it kind of goes into her story and talks about that. And then her mom was a teenager, was young in the time when Mao was coming to power and communism was overtaking China. And then I think it's her escape or something.
From China?
I think so. It just kind of goes through Chinese history, what it was like to be a woman in China during these times. I've started reading it before, and it's a really, really powerful book, and it's really difficult to just sit and get through it. So it might take me a while, but because it's really good, it's really powerful. So but
you want to read biographies?
I guess.
So the next sci-fi book on my list is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I think this is kind of a light sci-fi. Yeah. Something that's like a hard like space opera sci-fi. So this one is about a man who he's married and has a child, and then one day he gets held up at gunpoint. I don't know if they like shoot him or something, but he gets knocked unconscious somehow, and he wakes up in I don't know if it's like a different world or
Like an
alternate reality or something. But in this one, he doesn't have a wife or a child. And I think he's a famous scientist in this world. So it just is like, is this the real world? Was the other world a dream? Is this a dream? What's going on? I've heard good things about it, so
I have too. I want to read this one too.
should Buddy read it?
We should. I actually own it. Bless you.
I don't know if you can hear that, but the third sister and Phil and our dad are playing Super Smash Brothers. They're like across the house, and I don't know.
It's really loud.
It's very loud.
All right, the next book on my different genre TBR for 2020, that was fancy, is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. And this is the first book in the first Law trilogy.
Isn't that fantasy?
No, it's, well, okay, so it's technically fantasy, but it's grim dark.
Oh, okay. I was like, fantasy, really?
I don't read any fantasy.
You like almost exclusively read fantasy.
I do. That's one of my goals for next year, though, is to read more books out of my typical genre. But, so, it is a fantasy, I think, but it's grim dark, and I don't do grim dark, like, at all. So, honestly, I don't know much about this book. I think there's someone named Logan Nine Fingers or Ring Finger or something. But from what I understand, this first book, it's more character driven than plot driven, so there's not necessarily much of a story in this first book. But then in the next two books, it's more plot driven. So
I've heard this is a good introduction to grimdark.
That's what I've heard too.
The next sci-fi book I have on my list is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. So this one is about a little girl who falls to the earth one day while she's riding her bike.
Falls through the earth?
Yeah. Not like out, like she doesn't come out the other side, but she falls like into the earth. And when the firemen come,
just pops out the other pole.
Woohoo! And when the like firemen come to rescue her, they look down and she's like standing on this giant hand.
Oh,
yeah,
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and they don't know like where it came from or
it's a sleeping giant.
Yeah. And so then when she grows up, she becomes a physicist, and she leads a team to try to figure out what the heck this giant hand is. See, this all sounds so cool.
They do.
But then I'm just worried that they're gonna end not satisfyingly.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
The next book that I would like to read is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I have tried to start this one before. As you can see, I've made it a lot of the way through. But, so this book, there's a little boy, and he's at this museum with his mom, and the museum, like, blows up. And he's one of the only survivors.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's literary fiction, and I think the reason why I can't always get behind literary fiction and why I haven't made it very far in this book is it's kind of like jazz music. I don't know where it's going and what the point is.
Where are we going?
Like, I don't know. So I think there's some sort of painting, something.
I mean, a museum blew up. That seems...
Yeah, that seems reasonable, doesn't it? So, in short, I don't know a lot about this, even though I made it.
It's a big book.
It is a big book. But I was over 200 pages in. Whatever, it's fine. So, I will finish this next year.
Another genre I want to get into next year, well, maybe not get into, but try, is a Western.
Dip that toe in.
Yes, so I've only picked one book because it's a pretty specialized market, I feel like.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So my grandpa reads it, though, and so I borrowed one of his books, which my grandpa reading this genre kind of says why it's such a specialized market. I have The Haunted Mesa by Louis L'Amour. I don't really know what this one's about, to be honest. We'll see.
Give it a go.
Give it a go.
All right, the last book on my different genre TBR is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. And this, obviously, Stephen King wrote it, so it is a horror. And I've kind of stayed away from horror purposely. I I have in the past been easily scared. So, we'll
past?
see.
Not currently.
I've gotten better. I don't know a ton about this. You've started or read this one.
Yeah, I kind of lost steam. It's kind of has a slower beginning, and it's like you can see where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm just like, let's get there.
I think that's pretty classic Stephen King from what I understand though.
I don't know. I don't think I've read another Stephen King.
So, from what I understand though, there's a pet cemetery and I think the pets like come back to life or there's zombies or something. It sounded like a decent intro to horror. There you have it. That's the end of my list.
I don't have any more. I maybe will try historical fiction next year too, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of just want to give sci-fi a try first, maybe.
A whole year dedicated to sci-fi.
Well, I only have 4 books on there, so that's 4 months dedicated to sci-fi. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video.
Bye.
Oh, also, when you said science fiction, I suddenly realized that sci-fi was short for science fiction.